pretty strange. But then the level of strange amps up considerably. Yesterday, or perhaps it was the day before, Donald Trump, in an interview with CBS News, said he was talking about James Clapper, who was the former head of the CIA, as I recall. He might have also been DNI, but you know, he was the head of the CIA. He says, you know, Clapper wrote me a beautiful letter when I first went to office, and it was really nice. And then all of a sudden, he's gone haywire. This is Donald Trump speaking. All of a sudden, he's gone haywire because they got to him. And they probably got him to say things that maybe he doesn't even mean. End of quote from Donald Trump. So who is they? Well, Michael Scheuer over at non-intervention.com, his blog, and you know, Michael Schroyer has been a guest on this program a number of times. Back during the Bush years, he wrote books about, he's a former CIA guy, and he wrote books about Osama bin Laden and how when he was on our program, as I recall, it was, you know, his concerns that the Bush administration was overreaching in their reaction to 9/11 and basically diminishing the rights of Americans. A position, by the way, with which I largely agreed, which is why he was on the program. So I haven't talked to Michael in, geez, I don't know how long. 6, 8 years, 10 years, something like that. But his blog today is interesting and troubling and may help us answer that question. Who is this they that Donald Trump is talking about? Because I think that Michael is reflecting, I mean, in this one blog is distilled a lot of the stuff that you will find at Breitbart and on Fox so-called news and on right-wing hate radio and over at Alex Jones's InfoWars site and whatnot. So Michael Scheuer writes, as this week's end, I think he means at this week's end. This is from July 14th, so this is like from 5 days ago. It seems likely that it is quite near time for killing those involved in the multiple and clearly delineated attempts to stage a coup d'etat against the legitimately elected Trump government and thereby kill our republic. So his opening sentence is, it's time to start killing people, or it's quite near time for killing people. He writes, this week saw the alternative media, I'm assuming that's his phrase for what we refer to as the mainstream media, the corporate media, document nearly 300 incidents of violence against loyal U.S. citizens that have been perpetrated by Democrats and the domestic terrorists that the party and its financial supporters keep on their payrolls. Are we figuring out who they is yet? The week saw FBI agent Strzok brazenly lie to Congress, show his own detestation for everyday Americans, it's their smell, he says, and display facial and other physical quirks that appeared very reminiscent of a demented beaver, a drug addict, or a loyal Democrat. So we're filling in the blanks on they. The week saw on Friday the 13th, Special Counsel Mueller and his Democratic apparatchik lawyers indict 12 supposed Russian intelligence officers with a laughable amount of evidence pertaining to their purported involvement in the 2016 election. And he suggests that Mueller's doing this to screw up Trump's opportunity to meet with Putin. He says, finally this week, and he's got this bill of grievance, sort of like the Declaration of Independence did. They did this, and then they did this, and then they did this. He says, finally this week saw a significant and quickening advance toward the moment when those millions... Now, let me just pause this right here. Kristallnach was over a decade in the making in Germany. The hard right in Germany that eventually came known as the National Socialist Party had been arguing for some time that there was a they among the German people, specifically the Jews. And Kristallnach was the night that the volunteers, right, the well-armed citizenry of Germany. This was not the government of Germany that did this. This was average Germans went into the streets and smashed the windows of Jewish-owned stores. Back to Michael Scheuer. He said, finally this week saw a significant and quickening advance toward the moment when those millions of well-armed citizens who voted for Trump and who have been abused or wounded by Democrats, their antifa thugs, and their thug civil servants for exercising their franchise to elect Trump cannot, in good conscience, patient for much longer, or be patient for much longer. Fortunately, they have in hand a long and very precise list, they being those well-armed citizens who voted for Trump. Fortunately, they have in hand a long and very precise list of the names and photographs of those who hate and threaten them, their families, their way of life, their liberty, their livelihoods, and their republic. No self-respecting and determined to remain independent citizenry can let themselves forever be held hostage by thug civil servants like Strzok, Comey, McCabe, Page, and Rosenstein. Worshippers of tyranny like the Democratic members of Congress. I have to hand it to Michael. He says Democratic. He doesn't use the Democrat thing from Joe McCarthy. The Clintons, the FBI, and the Obamas, apparent traitors like Brennan, Hayden, and Clapper, all of the mainstream media, and the tens of thousands of government-admitted and protected violent, criminal, and illegal immigrants. And he wraps up his rant. And as I said, you can read this over at non-intervention.com, Michael's blog. And I'm not attacking Michael. I'm pointing out here that this is the thinking that is going on that I think is leading to Trump saying they got to Clapper. He said, American patriots have so far, praise God, been remarkably disciplined in not responding to tyranny and violence with violence. For now, they must remain so, armed but steady. But the time for such patience is fast slipping away. Indeed, that patience is quickly becoming an obviously rank and self-destructive foolishness. If Trump does not act soon to erase the above-noted tyranny and tyrants, the armed citizenry must step in and eliminate them. It is, of course, far better if Trump does so, and I pray and believe he will, Michael writes. That said, the sheer, nay, utter joy and satisfaction to be derived from beholding great piles of dead U.S. citizen tyrants is not one that will be missed if Trump does not soon do the necessary to save the republic. But if he fails, the citizenry must act to ensure that Hillary's predictive words are proven correct. If Trump wins, she apparently said, we will all hang. I know of no evidence that Hillary ever said that, which I think is why Michael said apparently. And there's some interesting comments to it. But, you know, setting aside, well, I don't know what you can set aside here, but let me make this clear. You can go on the internet and you can just, read these sites, and what you will discover is that this is not unique to Michael's site. And these kinds of calls to action, these calls to violence. Who is the they that Donald Trump says got to Clapper? And what is this leading us to now? What do we do with this? I'm talking in a practical way as people living in a democratic republic. Democrats whose suggestion is, gee, maybe we should join the other 33 countries in the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD countries. Why don't we join the other 33 countries and have a national health care system? Why don't we regulate the banks? Why don't we stop dumping poison into our air and water? And for these calls, these Democrats are called communists and socialists and enemies of the people. To say we should secure our election systems? Rand Paul says that this is hatred of the president. to say we should lock down our election systems? Is this a case of the ends justify the means? I mean, the Republicans seem to like rigged elections, right? Whether they're rigged by the Russians or whether they're rigged by Debo